You need to see this. This is the new VILTROX 75mm APS-C lens on the Sony ZV-E1, which is a full frame camera. Yo, what's the story? For me, I feel that a lot of my footage, while it looks good, it kinda, I think anyway, it lacks that cinematic vibe to a certain degree. I'm not talking about the color grade, but how it looks, it kind of doesn't have that compressed background where the background is kind of quite closer to the subject and you don't get that insane bokeh in the kind of cinematic sense, if that makes any sense. And that's because I'm always kind of shooting stuff on wide angle lenses to get as much of the picture in there as possible, so it's very hard to get that compressed look. In fact, you can't really get that compressed look with something like a 16mm or a 20mm lens. Recently, I got an email from VILTROX who said, look, we've got this brand new 75mm lens coming out. Do you want to review it? And I'm like, oh, this is it. It's perfect. Just what I want. And no, by the way, they didn't pay me any money for this lens review. In my excitement of seeing this lens, I completely missed one very important point. This was an APS-C lens. I don't have any APS-C cameras anymore because I sold my Sony ZV-E1 and every camera I have now is a full frame camera. I was about to send an email to VILTROX saying no thanks, but no thanks, but then I was thinking, hang on, so look, the lens will work on a full frame camera, but there is going to be severe vignetting because an APS-C lens is just a lot smaller and it doesn't cover a full frame sensor, hence it's called an APS-C lens and full frame lenses are called full frame lenses. But then I remembered something that could change everything. The box for this VILTROX 75mm lens is quite cool. It comes with all the usual things like you'd expect, like a lens cap and a lens hood and all of that kind of stuff, right? And it is a really chunky lens, and I gotta say, the first thing here is this kind of feels like it just feels so good in the hand. It's like, oh, this feels just substantial. Specs wise, this is a said 75mm lens. It's got an aperture of 1.2 right up to f16. It's got 11 aperture blades. You do have to be quite far away from your subject, nearly a meter. The focusing distance minimum is 0.88 meters or 88 centimeters. Is that right in it? Yeah. It's got an ultralight internal focusing mechanism. It's an STM focus motor, so it's really, really silent. You have the manual focus, automatic focus option if you want. And the filter size is 77mm, which is kind of standard for a lot of folks out there. First impressions blew me away. This was the look I really, really wanted, that compressed look. But the fact is, this lens, being APS-C, is small. It's incredibly portable. You're not going to need a big bag of gear to drag this around. It's just going to slot in there. Look, I'll tell you, I got so excited about this, I haven't changed my desktop background. If you've been watching any of my videos for a long time, I've always had the open LED sign wallpaper. Just kind of thought it looked cool. I love the look of it, the orange and teal vibe, and it's like, I'm open to success, I'm open to good videos, blah, blah, blah. This, I shot these two barbecue firelighters on my smoker at the weekend, and I just loved how the whole thing looks. Just, it's crisp, it's the cut. Oh! So first impressions were really, really good. Recently, I bought the Sony ZV-E1 along with this VILTROX 75mm lens to a work gig that I was shooting in my day job. I gotta say, I just use it predominantly for photography and a little bit of video, and it worked incredibly well. Like, obviously the bokeh is insane. The sharpness levels are phenomenal in this lens. There's actually no distortion. Color accuracy was amazing. It's not that soft anywhere. This was really, really good. And just for the couple of days I was shooting this event, it worked flawlessly. But it's only recently, in the last few days, that I've said, okay, let's dig into the video side of this lens. Remember earlier I said I remembered something? Yeah, the Sony ZV-E1 has something called dynamic stabilization, which has a huge crop. It's got a 30% crop, which 100% fixes the vignetting problem with this VILTROX APS-C lens. Bingo! Worked. Amazing. However, the vignetting is still an issue. And look, this isn't the lens's fault. I'm trying to use an APS-C lens in a full frame camera, but it's an issue depending on the mode that you're in. So for example, on the Sony ZV-E1, if you're shooting that insane 4K 120p, you're going to get vignetting because you can only have active stabilization on, in that you can't get dynamic stabilization. Regardless of the mode, even if it's an S and Q mode, you cannot get dynamic stabilization on a lot of the slow modes, including the 1080 240. So you are left to deal with that vignetting, which can be annoying, but in other modes, it doesn't matter. 60p, boom, insane dynamic stabilization fixes that crop. The way this image looks, to me anyway, I think this is absolutely worth the trade-off. And you think, okay, this is a non-Sony lens, so will the autofocus, which is incredible on the Sony ZV-E1, be as good on a non-Sony lens? Let me tell you, it just works flawlessly well. I can't see any difference between the autofocus on this VILTROX lens versus one of the native Sony lenses. I just can't. Gotta be honest, I use an 85mm full frame lens as a B camera lens, especially for talking head interview testimonial stuff, and it looks insane. And it's a Sony lens, it's the G Master lens. And not only is it insanely heavy, it's insanely big, and it is insanely expensive. Insanely? Yeah, that's enough, right? And for a lot of folks, it's one of these dream lenses you might never be able to afford to get. So the APS-C lens is a trade-off. So what do you do with the vignetting? If you don't have something like the Sony ZV-E1 that has got that dynamic stabilization or that dynamic, insane, badass crop, it's a really simple fix regardless of the E-mount camera that you might have. You should, number one, be shooting in 4K anyway, because the simple fix really is you can crop in post. That's it. Just crop in. If you're shooting, crop in just a tad in post-production, scale it up. It's really easy to do regardless of the software that you are using. And that, my friends, is the fix. So essentially you're just getting rid of the vignetting. You're not scaling the image up hugely, but it's just enough to shift that and you still get this insane looking image. And the thing is, there is no guesswork here because you will see the vignette on your camera monitor or whatever you're using, so it's always going to be there. Obviously, you're not going to see it with dynamic stabilization, but that's the thing. There's no guesswork. You go, okay, so when it comes to framing your shot, you can just be conscious of that. Here's why you too should consider this VILTROX 75mm APS-C lens on a full frame camera. I gotta be honest, right? I never really considered APS-C lenses for full frame cameras. I'm like, I've got a full frame camera, no more APS-C lenses for me. Huh. Yeah, this has really opened my mind now. To be honest, probably every APS-C lens is not going to suit every full frame camera out there, but in something like this, a 75mm, when you look at the trade-offs that you get here, essentially it's the vignetting. Everything else is a win because it's size, it's tiny, it's very portable. Yes, it's chunky, but it's still portable, and it is not going to break the bank in comparison to full frame lenses, and you still get that insane compressed cinematic look. I mean, I love this lens. I gotta be honest, I love this lens. All of those trade-offs, I think they're, and at the price point, absolutely worth it. I think VILTROX have done an amazing job on this lens. And you've done an amazing job by getting to the end of the video. Now, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheesy, but they might subscribe because of that. Yeah.